Very excited to get things started. I wanted to welcome everyone to the FYI by Find Your Influence. My name is Chelsea Goodson. I'm the head of creator economy here at Find Your Influence. I'm really excited to jump into today's topic. We're talking about content strategies for influencer marketing success and kind of creating compelling campaigns through that. A few of the topics that will include key elements of successful influencer marketing strategies. What role does a brand's storytelling play, in these campaigns? How can brands encourage influencers to maintain authenticity while promoting their products, and so much more? But I would love to introduce you to our first, our panelists here. I will let you jump in, Chanee, and give a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Chelsea. So I'm Chanee Hylton. I'm a senior strategist over at Laundry Service under Wasserman. I'm also the co-founder of Melanin Moi, and I am also an art director. So lots of stuff. Stay busy. I really do love and value influencer marketing and creator marketing, and I'm really excited to talk to you guys about that today.
Wonderful. Well, we're so excited to have you. And Lauren, I would love for you to jump in and share a little bit about yourself as well.
Amazing. Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Ludlow. I'm the founder of an agency in New York called Ludlow Social, where I develop partnership strategies and specifically ambassador and long-term partnership playbooks for Fortune 500 brands. I've done this for the last decade for every brand in the drugstore, I think. Beauty is my sweet spot. So looking at brands like Olay, Number 7, Sephora, Gillette Venus, and then I've also, dabbled in the fashion and lifestyle space. And something else I'm really passionate about is just connecting and building relationships. So if any folks are in New York, I host a monthly mixer called the Beauty Social, where brands and creators can come together to, really have more of a genuine connection in an intimate setting. So anyone on this call is invited to tune in, and looking forward to our chat today.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, thank you both for that. I thought I would go over a couple of housekeeping items really quick. So just a note, all attendees' cameras are off and microphones are muted, so no need to worry there. And then our Q&A chat is open. It'll be open during the duration of our webinar, and we really encourage you to submit any questions. And then toward the end of our conversation, we'll go ahead and walk through those. So please leave your questions there. And with that, we can go ahead and dive in. We've got quite a few topics to cover today within kind of this realm of successful influencer marketing campaigns and, really how to tell a very compelling story with them. I have, a group of questions, but I just want to open it up to both of you. Please feel free to jump in wherever you best see fit. I think that's the way these conversations go the most organically. But Chanee, I thought I would start with you and ask, what are the key elements of a successful influencer marketing strategy, just in general?
Yeah, so this is such a loaded question to me. I think there's so many different elements that go into
Yes.
them. So, top line considerations that come to mind, obviously measurable goals, but I think that's a very generic statement. So, what I really mean by that is like different influencers' content is different or good at doing different things. So, two of my favorite influencers right now are Signed Blake and Melissa's Wardrobe, and they're in like the fashion kind of categories and home decor, and they're really good at driving conversion. So if you're employing them to be a part of your influencer campaign, that's something you want to prioritize for them. Other macro influencers, for example, would be greater at awareness because they have the following to do so. But whereas micro influencers, they might not have what the macro influencers have in terms of awareness, but they probably do generate high engagement because they have a really targeted audience. So it's all dependent kind of on the influencers that you're employing for your campaigns, I think, that will really drive the performance. So that's one. Also, similar target audiences, of course. You want your influencers to have audiences that are in line with yours or your prospective audience for that added reach and for like that authentic engagement with their audiences. I love influencers that offer a compelling or like a contemporary perspective on a campaign that brings something fresh and new, where it's like when you look at your campaign recaps, you're like, no, this person's content was the best because they did something new and different to the campaign than the ordinary content. Credibility as well, obviously. You want to make sure that you're working with people that can deliver what you're asking them to deliver. And then timing, you don't want to miss your mark and kind of be delayed. So for example, I work a lot of things on Fashion Week. If we have an influencer that provides their assets late, we no longer can use them because it's no longer relevant, it's no longer buzzy. So I would say those are just some that come to mind.
Yeah, no, those are great ones. Those are excellent. And again, Lauren, feel free to jump in, but kind of as a follow-up, I thought I could ask you specifically, Lauren, how do you define your target audience and really go about choosing the right influencer for any given activation? I know Chanee kind of touched on that a little bit, but it's obviously a very important topic.
Yeah, it's funny. I used to think of myself as a partnership matchmaker for a really long time because at the end of the day, what, these strategies and a great campaign is looking to do is to align the brand values and like the ethos of what you're trying to go after, whether it's a product launch, an event, a big moment, into the influencer's identity. And I think there's really been a shift lately. And, I think a lot of people used to hear like, we're creating thumb stopping content, right? We want to stand out amongst the noise. And now I actually think you want to become more of that integrated partner. So it feels really natural and genuine and it makes sense. So if you're thinking about how to define your target audience and who's the right influencer for any activation, I mean, broad strokes, right? You need to be looking at those traditional demographic data points. What's the age demographic we're looking for? What's the target location that the product's even available in is a very important one, right? Is it only in the Northeast or is this a nationwide campaign? One of my favorite tips though is to really kind of dig a bit deeper and look at behavioral insights. I love to be able to see, even if I follow, like one of my favorite creators at the moment, Remy Bader. I'm like fascinated by her and just her journey and her transformation. But I look at who's engaging with her content. What are they resonating with? What are they commenting on in her post? What do they trust? And I think it's like a fine tooth comb to go through and see what's going to resonate more with this influencer and the creative direction that we have. Will it make sense? Will it actually integrate in a way that feels more seamless? So I think you can look at some of those behaviors, the mindset, and those traditional demographics to come together with a list of influencers that make sense.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. I'm right there with you. And again, it's just about finding the right person. I think you really hit the nail on the head when you said, we love thumb stopping, but I think it's more so about the integration now. So how do you find the right person that feels truly authentic to your brand and really can be integrated so that it doesn't feel so abrupt when you see an ad come through on their feed? But Chanee, I thought we could kind of follow up here to that conversation in terms of, what kind of role do you see brand storytelling play in influencer marketing? And this again kind of rolls into the individuals that we pick, how we kind of come about our strategy, but how can we really integrate the brand's own storytelling into what we're trying to create with our influencers?
Yeah, so I'm big on like open briefing and letting influencers lead a lot of the creative direction when it comes down to campaigns. And so I think with that and all of that freedom that you're giving influencers, you have to make sure that the brand's ethos is coming through in their content. They're essentially acting as a funnel for your brand ethos through their content. They're showcasing real life examples of how the product can be integrated or the service can be integrated within their real lives through their content. And so because of that, you just want to make sure that they're doing a good job at echoing that for you in an authentic way and in a way that kind of is a filter for them, and it shows up with their magic on it. It doesn't want to feel like it's almost like too brand led, too advertising kind of, because then people are not going to resonate with it as much as if they find a way to tell the brand story and emulate the brand story in an authentic manner.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think too, so many brands get stuck on this where they think brand storytelling means the creator must display the value of the product. And like it only goes that far. And that's where you find really rigid, boring content. I feel like if they can go one step beyond, think about what is that transfer of excitement. If you were to talk to your best friend about why you liked something. How would you communicate to that and just be more human with it? Brands can get really stiff and rigid with their key messages. And I think, Chanee, that's really to your point of like kind of taking those guardrails off. Let the creator tell this in the way that makes sense to their voice. And you know, seeing what's going to resonate with their audience is should be the goal at the end of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like, my next question was going to be, how can brands really collaborate to create this type of authentic content? I think we've kind of touched on it, but maybe as a follow-up, what type of content do we tend to see resonate most with audiences? Is it through social? Is it through newsletters? I mean, there's a lot of different variances nowadays that I think influencer marketing can play in. And I'd be curious to hear from you all, where you see that kind of, that messaging, that authentic content really coming through the most? Is it TikTok? Is it YouTube and newsletter? Like I mentioned, Substack. I mean, where are we kind of seeing that now?
I can take it first. So I think the power of niche communities such as Substack, such as more like community based, like true community based platforms right now are not only important now, but will be prevalent all throughout 2025 because of the noisy algorithms of our classic Instagrams and TikToks and whatnot. So because of that, everyone that's I guess consuming that content on those kind of like niche platforms are doing it with intention, doing it because they truly want to read, they truly want to listen, they truly want to hear what the platform or the creator is saying. And so with that, I think that's probably the most resonant. And then something else that comes to mind is podcasts. Like I know like you're either a podcast person or you're not, I think. But those who like listen to podcasts, they have their favorite podcasters. They tune in every week. They can recall different episodes and different moments from different episodes. That's how ingrained they are in that specific podcast culture. And so I have a few that I love and they can tell me anything. Honestly, they can tell me anything. And so those, I think it kind of comes down to the how ingrained you are in the influencer's content. The medium isn't as important as how well I would say the influencer is at touching and reaching their audiences and getting their audiences to engage and to stay, not just to watch one-off videos, but to really like subscribe and watch and stay tuned into this person's updates when it comes down to their content is also something that's important.
Yeah, absolutely.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think too, you're seeing audiences crave a mix of different content now, right? Social media definitely has absorbed all of our attention spans. But I think there is, even with YouTube Shorts, just announcing it's going to move to 3 minute long videos. We see Substack coming around more and more. We see blogs still having a comeback for if you have a really high value product. Okay, TikTok shops might not be your play. You might need some additional content to reinforce the value of that post or that product, excuse me. And so think about too, how do you not just saturate one platform? How do you kind of show up in a couple really intentional ways with that creator so that you have memorability? And then you can think about what does the brand recall look like? I think that to me is when I think about what's going to resonate most with an audience, I will typically encourage a lot of my clients to factor in how many times does it take us to see this product to actually remember it, want to learn more about it, buy it, and then even keep it and not return it afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. All such great points, and I appreciate that. Kind of in the same line, thinking about like visual branding. How important is that visual branding to be within the content and, kind of be featured by the influencer? Chanee, let me know. I know specifically I have this question for you, but for you both, let me know if you have some thoughts on this. Because again, we're trying to figure out the most authentic and compelling way to integrate any brand. And of course, their messaging, their key points are all important, but I think visuals are also very important as well.
Yeah, I think I would place a decent amount of credibility in on people having visual branding within the content that they're posting.
Yeah.
I just think it needs to be that can come off so easily as inauthentic or very like traditional ad, like here's this thing. And when it's like that, it falls flat. And again, social media is noisy. No one wants to tune into that. I think someone who does a really good job at integrating product in a way that we kind of almost don't even remember it's an ad sometimes is Monet McMichael.
So
She
good.
she's so good at anything that she does, honestly, on TikTok, and on her other platforms. But she has, I would say, maybe 2 to 3 sponsored posts every 2 weeks that are woven into her timeline on TikTok. And you know it's coming as you're like scrolling and getting updated on her feed or whatever, but it doesn't make me want to swipe away. Like I'll actually see how she applies the product. And it's because she leads with a story. She leads with it being personable, and I think that's what helps the payoff of incorporating the product within the content, because it starts with a real life problem or a real life use case scenario. Then she then showcases the product and applies the product in whatever way, and then you see the benefits of her doing so. And so because of that, it excels. And I think that when influencers employ that kind of strategy of like, let's lead with the story and not necessarily, or like the human use case of this versus this is this thing that this brand gave me. That to me personally, it doesn't move the needle at all.
Yeah.
Like that was such a good answer.
Oh,
Yes,
thank you.
yes. You mentioned a creator. Remind me their name again.
Monet McMichael, she was an RN in New Jersey, and now she's this big beauty influencer with tons of partnerships.
I think she was
Amazing.
just named on like it was like Forbes top 100 creators recently.
Yeah,
Incredible.
It's interesting too. I did a partnership with her recently. Um, and a
cool.
lot of it was thinking about, Monet loves to play tennis. And a lot of times this summer, she was on and off the court. We had a
Mhm.
product that was for hydration. And so we really thought about how do we show up where she's already in these scenarios. Now, we did ask her to maybe put on the wardrobe ideally matched the colors and like the tonality of what the brand was going for, just to create some sort of synergy on it when we went to produce a paid ad with it. But it was really fun to just, take this lens of what is the creator already doing? How can we be incorporated into that? And not to be like too polished with it. Like let the guardrails kind of come off. Don't be overly branded, even in your text overlays. Making sure that it's not screaming, this is an ad. This is like so branded with the brand's visuals, I think is key.
Yeah. Well, that's a good segue into talking about creative freedom. So both of you feel free to jump in, but Lauren, I had a thought for you in terms of, creative freedom. Do you think it's needed for influencers to like take this on into their content creation? I know you're just talking about that paid ad in terms of like color scheme, things like that, but kind of outside of that realm, how much creative freedom do you feel is important for the influencer to have versus kind of the give and take or push and pull with any brand in terms of like what they really need, the overlays, the messaging, the colors, things like that?
Yeah. So when I'm thinking about my influencer campaigns, I think what's a really important distinction is I'm not just running one campaign with a brand. We usually have multiple going at the same time so that there are times where I want creators to have more agility. They're tapping into trends. They're really being like my creative leads on a campaign. There are other times where we do need more scripted, traditional, like in the beauty space, we want product tutorials and application shots, and we have a very detailed brief for that. Where the blend is making sure that your creators feel like it's a collaboration and thinking about what's natural to their voice in a way that you're not micromanaging them. So I will typically talk about it in a sense of like we're building a fence, and then what are we allowing them to play within? They need to have very established guardrails so that they know, okay, if we show a Nike sweatshirt in this content, I'm going to have to reshoot it. Or I know the brand wants, the product shown in the first 10 seconds. That is helpful for them as creatives to know what does creative freedom mean in this brief. You're giving them that articulation up front, and there's no surprises later when you have to edit or reshoot or any of those things.
Yeah. That's perfect. Shanae, I wanted to see if you wanted to jump in on that. And I realized I got one of my questions mixed, but I feel like this is a good segue in talking about guidelines and if there's anything else that you feel like Lauren said will kind of fit into that. We have a box, if you will, and we're kind of like, okay, we have room within this box. What other guidelines do you think would be important to set up with the creator so that they're staying, within what the brand is looking for, but they still have that creative freedom?
Yeah, I think, I guess just to speak to this, the open briefing process in general, I think setting them up with full context of what this campaign is meant to do for the brand, what the campaign is meant, what the payoff is meant to be, I think really helps them to understand, okay, at the finish line, when I'm looking back at the campaign wrap, did I actually do what the brand asked of me to do? I
Right.
think definitely helps to then craft for them, okay, let me go this route for it or with it because I want to do a good job for this brand. This brand is now trusting me, especially with the open brief process. This brand is now trusting me to do something. I want to make sure that I'm delivering in a way that's authentic to me. So to all of the things that Lauren said, number one, but number two, I guess in general, just kind of like scripting, I think is important. And I don't mean like giving the influencer exactly what to say, but making sure that they touch on specific key points or don't say specific things or don't bring in brand competitors or compare the product to something else or whatever the case may be. And every industry is different. Some industries have a lot more leeway with this than others. If you're working in pharma or tech, you're going to have to deal with like, make sure you're not saying this, make sure you're saying this versus something that's a little bit more open. So I think that's also helpful to guide them in the process because open briefing can also be kind of like overwhelming if a creator, number one, is not used to working with brands or if they're not good at like open-ended things, like some actually like the guardrail, some actually like actually can you tell me what to do so that I'm not like
Yes.
overwhelmed. But I think that as the creator economy in general, all creators need to get a lot more, I guess, first if they're not already in open briefing, because again, you want the content to feel authentic. And so the traditional, or what's now becoming the traditional version of creator content, such as like just holding something up or just kind of like checking the box, is not going to be enough to move the needle. And then the investment in the creator is not going to be worth it then. So in order to like really have an efficient ROI, I think that we're going to continue to move deeper and deeper into open briefing and letting the stories be told by the creators so that it can really resonate with their audiences on their timelines.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's interesting too. Shanae, I'm sure you've seen this, but I will find oftentimes in the once we've identified our creators, we're ready to go, we're ready to kick off with concepting or the creative briefing call. Sometimes I will find talent managers are quick to say like, just give me the brief, we'll hand it over to the talent. We're ready to move, especially during seasons like holiday where creators are taking on a lot more volume of sponsored post. I will say it kind of kills my soul when that happens because it tarnishes the relationship. Like we're not actually collaborating anymore. I'm just telling you what to do. And so I think that's a
Very
really,
transactional.
it's so transactional. So also remember, I guess for any brands on this call, like to your point, there's going to be some creators who want very specific, just tell me what to do, get in the coin, get in the bag. That's that's still going to exist. There's going to be other creators who want that more flexibility with the brand and they want to brainstorm with you and just know that there's not like a one size fits all approach.
Mhm.
Absolutely. Well, talking about kind of that connection and authenticity, Shanae, I was kind of curious to hear from you. How can brands, encourage influencers to really maintain that authenticity while promoting their products? I feel like we're kind of touching on it from different viewpoints, but to specifically speak to it, I mean, how can they do that? Is it through that storytelling, like you were mentioning with that creator? Is it sharing how they integrate it into their life with something personal that's going on? I feel like some brands can be very hesitant of that just because it's not to the point. It's not hitting the needle on the head with this is exactly what it is. But then you're kind of risking that opportunity for the creator's audience to quickly say, hey, I'm not interested if I can't hear about their life or anything like that. So would love your thoughts.
Yeah. So I think that it as a brand going to the creator, it's really knowing the creator's content. Because then you can infuse within the brief, like, hey, so we like our products like shown in these kinds of settings. Like we've seen that you've done like content here or there, or we see that you're interested in these kinds of activities. And so just kind of like almost referring or giving them recommendations. Again, you can always preface it with like, these are just recommendations. However, this helps to paint the scene with things you've already done, things you've already expressed interest in, things that your audience already talks to you about and that you talk to your audience about, so that they understand like, oh, okay, so they can tap back into that creative essence that they've already done in organically in their previous content. I think that helps them to remain authentic because they don't have to they don't have to reinvent the wheel. They don't have to think of brand new things. They can just tap back into what's already worked and what we can see as the brand that can work well for us.
Mhm. No, that makes sense. Lauren, feel free to jump in if you see anything best fit there.
I It's so interesting as the word authenticity, I know is obviously a big point of this panel, but authenticity I think is also just remembering to be a human. Like if you're
Yeah.
going to get into a relationship with a creator and you like just think about the ways that you would want to be connected with, right? Like if they're local to your area and you're hosting an event, invite them. What for holiday are you sending them a thank you note for the organic support that they've done, how they've been a part of your brand's journey? Great. Yes, make sure you're noticing them. I find too, like so many brands, it's a little bit of an aha, but like, are you following them? Is the brand actually following that creator? Are they commenting on their posts? Like, how do we need to have a little bit more of a balance between it's not just about what we're telling the influencers do or not to do, but also like putting it back on the brand. What are we doing to show up in the best way that's going to enable them to feel like it's a two-way relationship?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I love that. My next question, I feel like again, it leads through very well, but what tactics can we best use to gauge audiences through influencer content? And of course, we're talking about like the influencer's audience here, but I think you just really said something wonderful in terms of like how are we communicating as brands to the content creator? How are we working with them? How are we treating them? Because like you said, it's a relationship and it's something you have to work on and build. Um, but feel free to jump in
Yeah.
there. I'm kind of curious to hear what you both have to say in terms of like how do you connect with those audiences now as the brand through the influencer?
100%. I mean, I really think it comes down to don't think like a brand. Think
Yeah.
like a consumer, think like a friend, think about how you would support them and engage with them. Um, even I really love when creators tend to show like real life, even like their candid moments, the mistakes, and you see the products incorporated in there. Or you see in the comment section, somebody's asked a follow-up question, and a creator will then do a response video to that comment. I
Mhm.
think there's some really creative ways that if we're thinking about how to engage the audience, look at what the creator is also doing and try and emulate that and be a part of that. So you're not coming in out of left field, but you're like joining an existing conversation that makes sense for your brand.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
Feel
I
free.
think that, yeah, I think that when the influencer then does post about your brand and does that, it then makes it makes the influencers community want to look into your brand, look into your socials, look into what you're doing. So keeping that in mind so that when you do have content that's coming out on your pages the following days or hours after this influencer has posted something, you want to make sure that it's relevant to this audience you're trying to draw in, especially if it's an aspirational or prospective audience. You want to make sure that there's nuggets on your social media and within your brand's website that will entertain them, that will draw them in, because you don't want the influencer to do their job and then as a brand you're not doing your job, as in terms of like trying to keep and make that the audience sticky and stay with you.
Right. Yeah. Well, maybe as we talk about kind of moving on to like analyzing and optimizing our campaigns, we've kind of gone through the content phase, our relationships with our influencers. Chanee, I was curious to hear what do you look for when you're deciding what worked well in a campaign and what didn't? Is it all analytics? Is it down to something more I'm trying to, the word escapes me, but when you're looking at the content, is it more of a feeling? Kind of what do you look for in terms of making sure that a campaign has worked well in a general sense?
Yeah, so I think something that if we're looking at traditional metrics, I think my favorite one is engagement rate. I think that then shows that you chose the right influencer, that the content and the content is in line with your brand, and that now your brand has this plus one, I guess you can say, from the audience, because now this audience is engaging with content that's affiliated with you through the influencer. And so their engagement is almost your engagement, because they're engaging by way of the influencer, yes, but it's because of this content only exists because they're promoting your product in some way. And so I think that's a big win, especially if you are a brand that struggles with engagement on your own channels. I think that's one thing. And then with brands, I think that at least a lot of the ones that I work with, they're always trying to reach a specific audience that's not already their target audience. And so when we find at the end of a campaign that, oh, this audience, our prospective audience, has engaged with this content, is now sees us in a different lens, is engaging in a way they never have before, is asking questions through the influencers content about us, it then makes us feel like, okay, we've done our job. We've done not only traditional reach, but like reach to our aspirational audiences. And that always feels like a win. It feels like you're now kind of breaking the mold and getting to truly engage with this audience that you might have trouble engaging with on a regular.
Yes. Lauren, feel free to jump in. I have another thought too, but wanted to make sure that you got your moment there as well.
I mean, certainly on my campaigns as well, we look at how did this content drive deeper engagement, really sparking a conversation. And ideally, if we're going beyond a one-off post, right, and we're showing up in multiple ways, we're having a few different touch points with them that we can measure, like, are we now discoverable to a new audience set, like Chanee had mentioned. I think too, look, if you're working in influencer marketing, you've gotten the question of how do we drive sales and what's the ROI of this campaign?
Right.
It's a challenging one. And I would just employ any brand that if you're looking to see, was this campaign successful or not in driving sales, also look at your checklist of where else did we distribute this content, and did we actually maximize the full usage rights that we had and the breadth of the content in organic and paid. Was the content easily accessible? Was it featured on our website? Did our website actually work in creating an easy sales funnel for somebody to purchase? I think some of those get missed, and creators really get a lot of pressure on their shoulders to drive conversion when the reality is that the checkout process on the site was terrible. And so I think a lot of this is also what's your 360 marketing approach when you're measuring how that campaign worked, quote unquote worked, and was it a success in that broader lens?
Yeah. No, great thoughts. Maybe as a follow-up, what kind of insights do you try to gain specifically and refine for the next time around? I know you're talking about your website. I think that's super important. They all say you can lead a horse, but you can't make them drink. So what other things do you look at when you're trying to decide, how well did this perform and what can I do to adjust in the future?
We certainly will look at, more qualitative insights. Were there a lot of comments? Were there saves? Were there shares? Specifically for some of my beauty campaigns, though, kind of taking it a step deeper, we'll often target like a retinol enthusiast, or maybe it's like a first-time buyer who's never tried Nutrafol for hair loss. Like, we're really thinking about this specific segment that we want to go after, and kind of seeing back, one, what's the watch time of the content? Did they even get past the 3-second mark? Is there an appropriate way to follow up on this campaign? If the creator loved the product and you believed it, right? There was that transfer of excitement. The insight I hope the brand is getting as a takeaway is that creator needs to be on your re-engagement strategy. You need to keep talking to them. Don't just ghost them and forget them.
Great point. Yeah, I think that's so important.
Yeah, and to I guess piggybacking off of that last point specifically of the creator utilizing the product in different ways, like onward, I think that is a key measurement of success as well, because it shows that they truly resonate with the product that was given to them to promote. And then it also just it's just bonus promotion every single time that they're using it authentically outside of this brand partnership content. and just in their everyday vlogs or everyday get ready with me's or day in my life content or whatever, it shows that, oh, okay, no, this product is truly valid. It has strong validity, and it actually did add value to this person's life. And it then also shows to their audiences that, okay, I can trust them as creators to only promote things that they truly like and enjoy, which is then a plus up for them because obviously now they're seen as authentic creators.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great thought. Chanee, what kind of metrics do you think brands should be focusing on to really evaluate, the success of any campaign? I know you talked about engagement rate, we're talking about conversions here, but what are like the top ones that you think that a brand should look at when they're really trying to decide, did this move the needle for us?
Um, I guess it kind of for me. I hate to say like this is
Mhm.
it's dependent on the campaign, but it
Sure, that's
truly
fair.
is because
Yeah,
some things you just really want to drive awareness to. Some things you really want people to buy. Some things you really, like, so it all kind of depends on what the campaign is overarching. And I think that engagement for me generally just is always going to be like a key one because over like across the board it shows that the content resonated and that there's conversation going on now about your product that you can learn insights from.
right.
But aside from that, I can't say it's one size fits all personally.
Sure.
I think, yeah, every campaign that I've worked on, and I think it's because I've worked on various things across various industries, I don't ever see like a red thread throughout that. I see like very specific needs for the specific campaigns, and all creators are so different that they deliver different value, I guess you can say. And that's just through my experience in influencer marketing. I know it might be different, maybe for Lauren.
Yeah. I mean, it also depends on how prevalent that product is, right? If we're talking about Ray-Ban sunglasses, like that's a household name. Your metrics are going to look a little bit different than an indie beauty brand that's just entering into market. Like you shouldn't be comparing yourself apples to apples with impressions and reach and engagement. It's going to look different. So you really need to right size it to market saturation. You need to look at, again, how's your website? If conversion is your goal, really looking at, clicks, look at the behavior on your site. Where were they going to? And even down to the content itself. Was the messaging clear? Did we throw in too many message points and then we created too much bloat in the content that it wasn't effective? So I think there's a couple different ways to look at what that success can be.
Yeah. Lauren, speaking of that, what kind of role do you think audience engagement plays in assessing, campaign success? I know you mentioned comments,
Yeah.
but kind of how do we take things a little bit further and involve the audience here?
Yeah, I mean, engagement is particularly audience engagement is key when, for a lot of my campaigns, there's usually a mix between organic and paid media taking place. And before we even put anything into a paid rotation, we really look and see, did this, to the followers we were trying to reach, did it offer advice, validation? Did it offer them something of value? And was it effective on that like first 7 days? Do we feel like we actually reached some point of critical mass? And we look at that because if you're going to then amplify it and paid and reach a much broader audience, you kind of need to have that like Q&A that you've tested to see that it actually worked. I think audience engagement also just showcases, were we a part of a story that made sense for us?
Yeah.
Or all the comments about something completely different, which I think we've all seen those posts where
Yeah.
maybe a
Yes.
creator is showcasing a really incredible lipstick, but man, everyone wanted to know what blazer they were wearing. Like that type of stuff,
Yes.
sometimes it just doesn't connect. So you have to
Right.
keep trying.
Yeah, no, great point. Janae, feel free to jump in there. I feel like that's such a great point because I think often the audience kind of gets forgotten about, even though that's who we're trying to hit, that's who we're trying to market.
No, yeah. I think there's also so many like different points of engagement now. There's likes, but there's also shares. Like how many people are, because some people don't comment. Some people like to
Yeah.
be kind of like aloof on social media, but they're
Yeah.
still there. And so they're the ones that are sharing, chronic sharers to their friends and family. and sometimes then creating additional discourse that we just don't even get to see, that they can be talking about the content for days and we just wouldn't know. But there's value in that. It shows that it truly resonated. There's also content that you want to bookmark and save for later. So maybe someone is showing content from a specific location, and then the consumer might be traveling there later, and so they're like, no, I need this for then. And but they found it valuable enough to make sure that they want to go back to. And again, social media is noisy, so in that's really valuable. Then there's reshares, repost, resharing to For You pages. So like there's just a lot of different ways that people can engage now with content,
Yeah.
and I think that makes it kind of fun to see like what story then can we garner from the ways that people have engaged, because it might have not a lot of comments but tons of saves or tons of shares, and it's like, okay, what can we gather as from that as a brand? So I think it's just kind of like defining, paying attention to the multiple points of engagement and seeing what it ultimately means for you and the effectiveness of the content.
Yeah, great point. Well, as we're talking, I feel like we're kind of looking to wrap up our conversation here. But one of the things that I think we talked a little bit about already, but I think is really important is building those long-term relationships. How do we keep things going past that one post? How do we garner, the success that we received now into the future? So, Chanee, I'd love to ask you, how and why do you think brands should, establish these types of partnerships? If so, for really sustaining that brand advocacy, say someone's starting, in fall and wants to see them through holiday and beyond. How do those conversations kind of look? And do you think they're important to keep up, or are we better to kind of move on and have, multiple creators versus just one long-term partnership?
I think it depends on the product. However, I think that just a long-term relationship with a creator is it's key, and it says a lot about the brand's relationship with the influencer and how that whole campaign, the initial campaign went. One, it shows that they truly respect and appreciate and like your brand and like the products that your brand produces. But number two, it also showcases that in this noisy environment of like there's multiple products, like there's a billion lipsticks out there's a billion shirts out there's a billion, so it's like for them to want to stay within your lane in terms of a brand, it says a lot about not only, it says a lot about the consumer in general, because it says that this influencer really likes a specific product or a specific brand, and then that also probably means that their audience also as a result also likes this specific brand or will eventually like this specific brand, because this influencer is showcasing the product in their content regularly or is constantly having partnerships with this particular brand. And so I think nothing but good things comes out of that, honestly, but you should
Yeah.
also know when to end, I guess you can say, a formal partnership with a creator, or have them show up in your brand's life in a different way. So maybe they posted 5 times about your product, or you had 5 different influencer content creation partnerships with them. Maybe we stop that and now we pivot into inviting them to launch parties so that they can do organic content while they're there, or inviting them to brand trips to just show that appreciation. There's so many different funnels that you can kind of like rework the relationship that you have with them to keep it fresh, to keep it exciting, and to keep them as long-term influencers, influencer partners, but also as consumers. So yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. And like ongoing brand partnerships, to me, it's why I even started my own company, wanting to help enable brands with ambassador strategies, right? We really think about ways to go beyond that one-off post because it's not believable. It truly creates such a transactional space where the opportunities in our industry are so rich right now to help consumers understand what your product does, understand the product effectiveness. To do that, you really need to think about repeat influencer endorsements across a series of time. And I think you can really do this if, not every brand's going to have an enormous marketing budget to, send influencers Louis Vuitton bags and take them on these like big Tarte press trips, right? Not every brand has that.
Right.
But it can be as simple as the campaign manager sending a thank you note after the campaign, and just recognizing this point of gratitude with the creator goes a long way. So that's what I think about. a
I
lot.
love maybe on the flip side, like how can these conversations continue with the influencers audience? I know we haven't really talked about paid much on here, just a little bit, but I feel like paid media is such a big part of our industry nowadays, and it's important to realize that it's a way for us to further connect with an influencer's audience. So maybe outside of the partnership for either of you, do you think there is a best way or best practice of connecting with a creator's audience, a long time after you've kind of had this relationship together?
Yeah, I always think it's so comical, I will say, when I see I'll get served like a story ad, and it's a creator's post, but the brand has amplified it. And I look at it and it's like, shoot, I know that influencer hasn't talked about that product in like 4 months. This is
Uh,
so random.
yeah.
And so I appreciate when brands utilize the paid usage terms that they have purchased, right? It could be 3 months, but you really kind of need to think about your relationships with these creators and like the audience you want,
Mhm.
almost like dating. It's not a marriage. You need to be kind of having that follow up with them to, rather than be territorial and exclusive, right? We're just showing up in ways that make sense. So if you're putting an ad unit in for, say it's for a holiday with these paid ads, make sure that you're still talking to that creator on the side so that they feel heard and noticed, and it's not completely random when I see a post that just like doesn't make sense on the feed anymore.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, I wanted to open it up to both of you before we headed into the Q&A and see if you had any other, lasting thoughts that you wanted to share in terms of, how to create compelling campaigns. I mean, I think anyone on this call could say, we're always looking for success. We want to make the most of our dollars and our relationships and the time that we have, but wanted to open it up and see if either of you had anything else that you wanted to share.
I will just,
Yeah, oh,
oh,
sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 you go for it. You go for it.
I just wanted to say that I think that in order to truly be just kind of like a smart brand in this like very dense space
Mhm.
is to truly know your audience. If you think you know them, try to know them even deeper because the more that you know about them, the smarter decisions that you can make. Even to the point of like they're moving into micro communities now, they're moving into these different platforms. Understand even how they work on those platforms. Understand how they're performing and behaving on different platforms. Just know them deeper and more contextually because it'll help you then figure out what influencers and what creators would make sense for your campaigns and drive more efficient results. I think because the landscape has a lot going on and people just care about virality a lot at this moment, it can cause brands and brand teams to get very jaded, feel like they're kind of like working against some kind of imaginary clock, and they have to they're trying to break through the noise instead of being efficient and taking the time to sit and think about like, okay, this is my audience, this is who really resonates with them, this is who I'm going to actually pick for my next campaign because it's actually going to be effective.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to say two quick points, but think about the positive relationship that you can have with that creator.
Yeah.
Ask them for feedback.
Mhm.
Did they find that your process, like, did they like your digital brief? Did they want a live briefing call with you? Did they find the product was actually used completely different than maybe you intended? I think
Mm.
kind of being more open with the creators to ask them for their thoughts and perspective is really valuable. Um, to that end, though, make sure your timelines are also enabling you to create a compelling campaign. We didn't quite touch on this too much in our discussion today, but if your timelines are really crunched, I'm sorry, you're probably going to get really flat, boring content. You need to allow a creative to have time to test a product to really believe that it is effective. And being able to create content in 2 days from the time that you've given them a contract is just not realistic. And I think there's a lot of brands that are kind of having these expectations that creators can just pick up a camera, shoot and edit. They're not doing anything else, but like respect them. They are doing so much on their own as a creative that you can either have a really positive, lasting effect with them, or you can be one that they're not going to answer your emails anymore. So there's
Yeah.
a lot you can do with it. And if any brands need support in this space too, I will say just being, independent with my own agency, I'm more than happy to have further discussions, have further dialogues, would love to connect with people.
Wonderful. Well, we've got quite a few questions in the Q&A, so I thought we could jump into those before we wrap things up. There was one that we didn't really touch too much on, and that's UGC. So this person said, for paid media campaigns, no organic posting required. Do you think the size, followership of the creators matter, macro versus micro creators?
I mean, follower count is a vanity metric.
Yeah.
It's just a number. They could have bought it.
Very true.
Preach.
Yeah.
That's my answer for you.
Perfect. No, that sounds good. I appreciate that. I feel like I know that over the years we've seen that. I think your brands are often very particular. That vanity number often means a lot to individuals, but it is, I think it's a different conversation, specifically when you're looking to UGC creation and then, when it's run for paid media. I think it's a even larger conversation kind of in the whole run, but specifically for that mean.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It matters if you're looking to tap into their name and likeness, right?
sure.
But if you're doing UGC content, you're probably looking to utilize them more as a model, a talking head, if you will. And so for that reason, I don't think the follower count should be your biggest measurement for it.
This one's talking about a strategy and a brief, and I feel like we talked a lot here about open briefing, but it says, how do we create a campaign strategy and corresponding creative brief that is as flexible as possible while getting all of the mandatories in there?
I think, yeah, that's truly the nature of like a truly efficient open brief, honestly. You want to make sure that, as a brand, you're giving them the mandatories, but and then, as I said, that added element of just kind of creative direction and inspiration is also really helpful to kind of like enable really smart, really dynamic content that already resonates with the creator. But yeah, I think that you also want to, in open briefing specifically, you want to make sure that you have a lot of time for approval and review because there is so much that they can take it a whole other way than you had envisioned. And it might not be because of them. It might be because you realize, oh, shoot, I didn't say X, Y, and Z, or I did not express X, Y, and Z in the brief properly or in an efficient way that they could understand what I was saying. And so because of that, you want a large runway before that launch day so that they can go in and rework and rejigger whatever needs to happen.
Yeah, perfect. This one also was talking about the briefing, but they asked, do you ultimately recommend doing so through like a phone call versus sending a digital brief? I feel like we talked about that a couple of times, but I feel like it seems at least in my perspective, from both of you, a call is always helpful and needed.
I think it depends on how technical your product is too, right?
Yeah.
It's if we're just talking about promote this lipstick,
Yeah.
I don't think you necessarily need a full-on briefing call. Would it be nice to have the touch point so you can express your excitement for the partnership? Absolutely. But I think also right size your expectations. If you don't have a good brief, please spend your time reworking that before you get on a call and it kind of goes haywire from there.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah. And then I also think that if you can, I think the more intimate, the better, but it also kind of depends on the influencer's preferences. Like if they're across the country, no, they can't come in for a coffee chat while you explain the brief. Or, if
Yeah.
they're traveling a lot, no, maybe they can't take the call because you're on a plane. So I think it also
Right.
depends just kind of like on the general lifestyle and availability of the creator. But others really love to be talked through every single aspect of it. And then there's others that get briefs every other day. So they're like, I got this. I don't necessarily need the hand holding aspect of getting on a phone call and whatnot.
Yeah. I think we have time for one more before we need to wrap. I know a couple of us have a couple of meetings that we need to run to after this. So the last one, I thought this was interesting. They said, can we get a point of view on mailers? Do they have a place in 2025 campaigns? When they say mailers, my first thought goes to gifting. But I'm sure, there's lots of other ways that you can send mailers out there, but was curious to hear if either of you have an opinion on that, whether it's like gifting to a creator, obviously, that you're working with, I think is important, but maybe gifting to someone that you hope to work with, maybe a potential UGC creator. Any thoughts there?
I love
I
gifting.
Yeah.
I do think you need to think about the value of what you're giving to them. So it's not on one side, I've seen a lot of brands try and get by with like a little $100 mailer that's filled with things that they don't need. It's how many times can we send them a branded light kit?
Sure.
I think other times, like Louis Vuitton actually just did a beautiful, beautiful gifting mailer where they sent
Yeah.
creators it's like a reversible tote, but they monogrammed each creator's initials on it, and then they tailored the inside color to the person's personality. That to me, like, I want to go hype them up for that. It's just so cool that the brand recognized them. So I think you have to, when you're thinking about gifting, what's the intention behind it? Is it to get share of voice on social media, or is it to build a relationship, or how do you want this to be displayed? There's certainly a time for them, but know that our attention spans are very short.
Yeah, I think just in general, I think the key point of mailers are to strengthen the relationship with whoever you're sending it to. Whatever comes of that comes of that. They might not post it, so then it's like, what now? We just sent it in hope and fingers crossed. You know what I mean? So to Lauren's point, just like the more thoughtful in the mailer, the better. So like, hey, you've seen that someone with that cares about skincare is having a lot of breakouts or flare ups. So like in the next week or coming days, you send them like your acne spotting treatment and saying, hey, like, like something of that nature where you really want to be authentic with the connection that you're forming with them and the reason that you're sending it out, I think is important.
Agreed. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation. I want to thank you both. I appreciate everyone who's joined us today. You can find both Lauren and Chanee on LinkedIn. And we hope that you'll continue the conversation with us over on our Facebook and LinkedIn groups under the FYI at Find Your Influence. And stay tuned for our next webinar. We're really excited. But thank you both, Lauren and Chanee, for your time today. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Appreciate and I've learned so much from you both, and I'm sure our audience has as well.
Yes,
Thank you. Yeah.
awesome dialogue. Thank you so much for having us. And
Yes.
Lauren, you're a genius.
Likewise.
Yes,
I could keep going for hours.
All right. Well, thank you both. And thank you everyone for joining us. We will be in touch soon.
Amazing.
Right.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.